All right, hello everyone. Hey, I'll just get right to the point of, getting started selling on eBay, right? And I'm not a big eBayer per se, I just talking to those who are kind of a lay person that's trying to just get started, breaking the ice, and, maybe you have an eBay account set up. If you don't, you want to learn how to do that. There's other videos that probably get more specific about setting up your eBay account, making sure you have your tax documents and all that stuff set up so that you can receive payments and so forth, right? Direct deposit, all the stuff you want to have on your eBay account, right? And I'm not a master at eBay, but there's probably some strategies that I've used to help me sell a bit of my stuff on eBay, right? You can use eBay for different reasons. Maybe you're using it for profit. Maybe you're using it to get rid of some stuff that's taking up some space. Maybe you're using it to just sell some old stuff you have and you want to replace it with some newer stuff. Maybe you're a wholesaler or something like that, right? But just getting right into it, what do you want to do? First things you want to do with your items, your household items, right? Like household items, are going to probably be a bit of variety going on there, right? You're not going to have an inventory of 20 or 100, rolls of toilet paper or whatever. You're going to have, you're going to have an old shaver. You're going to have, an old game controller. You're going to have just stuff laying around your house that you might not want anymore. You might want to think of anything and everything too, because you can list anything and everything, basically, almost anything and everything on eBay, right? And I'm wrong, maybe hazardous materials, some certain things that, aren't allowed on eBay, certain cigarette type products, stuff like that. But other than that, clothing items of virtually any kind. There's certain products that won't let you sell their items. So keep in mind, you could get, a notice from a company saying, hey, you're not allowed to sell our product. And in which case you have to make your own legal determinations, because I'm not an attorney or anything like that, right? But, they'll typically be telling you, hey, take our product down, don't sell our product on your website, on your eBay store, right? So stuff like that can happen, and you want to be aware of that. So it's up to you to make the decision. I recommend really probably just kind of taking it easy and complying with most of that stuff, unless you really feel that you're justified, because sometimes it could certainly be, a false threat. But at the same time, you don't want to put your eBay store at risk unnecessarily, in my opinion. You want to just play it safe and just play by the rules, right? So with eBay, the first thing you want to do is have your inventory kind of starting up, right? So you have maybe a little pile of inventory, you have a few items you're going to list. Listing just one item is like, yeah, whatever. I mean, it could, if it's a high demand item, it could get some search list, results in eBay. People could be searching for that item. But you probably want to list a few items, right? And there's different factors to eBay, right? Like listing in a spaced out listings that are consistent can help you get maybe more consistent views on your listings in different ways. It's hard to determine a lot of things about how eBay's algorithms and search engine works in some ways, right? But a lot of it's pretty straightforward, I think, especially concerned with, search, like people searching for a product and certain keywords and stuff that might be in your listing, and trying to find the best available listing or the lowest price listing or whatever other criterion eBay has when someone's going to shop on eBay, right? So you want to keep that in account when making your listings. But the first things to do, I would say, when you get those things that you're going to sell, right? You used items that you probably have laying around and stuff like that, maybe some old tools or auto parts or something like that, just stuff you have in your garage or whatever that you're thinking, hey, wait a minute, maybe I could sell this thing, right? Don't underestimate it, right? A lot of times you think, this is junk or whatever, maybe some smaller things that are just kind of junky and not worth, kind of list everything. To some degree, it's easy to underestimate, think, this thing's junk. But I sold some little tiny cord on the internet, on eBay for $15. It was like $15, not a big deal, but just as a small item, easy to list, and it helps me to replace some old stuff that I might not be using anymore, right? Be able to replace that with some newer versions or updated versions. So like I said, don't underestimate maybe something. The thing is also too, listing more of your items as well is giving you more overall visibility on eBay. eBay is seeing that you're making more listings, right? So, but with these listings, what you want to do is you get these items, and you want to do the first three things that you really want to do, I would say, first, right? This first three things, right? Clean, weigh, and measure, right? Clean, weigh, and measure all components of the item you're selling, right? The item you're selling. Maybe it has some extra components to it, or you're selling some set of something. Then make sure you have all components and you're clean, weighing and measuring. Cleaning it up means really, in my opinion, just having a vacuum handy with a hose is good, because in a lot of items, maybe a clothing item or electronic item, it might have a lot of dust or hair on it or something, some item you've had laying around. So just having a good vacuum with the hose and maybe a couple of, 2 or 3, 4 attachments that are good for dusting it and, pulling off hair and stuff like that quickly. So you can quickly clean those items up, right, and have a rag just to kind of wipe them up. You probably don't need any, some soapy water or something like that. You don't have to necessarily maybe clean your items perfect if they're just used items, but, you want it to look good in the pictures, right? You want it to look good in the pictures. So clean them up decent, right? The vacuum and wipe them down, right? Vacuuming them and wiping them down, maybe combing something if you need to, or, just quickly making it look, in decent shape, right? It's clean, right? It's quick, shouldn't take too long, right? With an item, whatever item you're selling, try to just straighten and make it look, as best as it could for a picture that you're going to take, right? So quick cleaning, right? Weighing, right? Now, so having like just some kind of scale that you can weigh your items on. The typical household item probably weigh like, a pound to 30 pounds, or maybe more if you have an appliance or something like that, an old Vitamix or something like that might weigh 30 pounds or 15, 20 pounds, I don't know exactly, but you get the idea, right? Some things are going to definitely have a little bit of a range of weights, right? Typically going down to like maybe, a couple ounces or something for a small item, right? So, and, but yeah, that means you just like, having a variety of, like probably a scale, a typical weight scale that you just measure your own body weight on, right, in the bathroom or something like that, will give you a pretty good idea in terms of poundage, actual poundage of your item, right? So if your item's really low weight, maybe you have a smaller scale or something like that, or you might just guesstimate it at, half a pound or a pound if it's, pretty low weight item. And at the same time, always overestimate the weight a little bit at least, right? So you're not stuck paying for extra shipping in the end when you're listing the item, right? So you want to have it like a little bit overestimated. Same thing with the measurements, right? The weight and the measurement, right? You're taking the item and maybe it's multiple components to it or something like that. Maybe put them all together like as if you were going to ship them to some degree, right? Just get a general idea of what kind of box these items would fit in. Is it a 10 inch by 10 inch by 4 inch, or whatever the approximate measurements of it. Take a tape measure if you have to and just kind of measure around the item, whatever it is, right? But also it depends on the item. I mean, if you're selling a piece of clothing, right, the shipping of it is going to be a much smaller package than the actual measurements of the item. If you're talking about the measurements of the item for someone to buy it, right, what is the sleeve length and all that stuff, right? So but the measuring of how it would be going into a box if you were to ship it, right? How could you fold it or arrange it without messing up the item, of course, to where you could ship it. So clean, weigh, and measure, right? Like I said, overestimate your weighing and measuring a little bit, right? You go a couple inches over the package size, you think. It'll be okay. You put it on eBay when you list it. They're going to give you discounted shipping anyway, and you can even pass it on to your customer. But that's it. So you got to clean, weigh, and measure, right? What's the next thing you're going to want to do? You want to have a place, a backdrop, or some kind of way to take some reasonable photos of the item, right? You want to take reasonable photos, means like maybe a white board. Like I have one back here, actually, a white cardboard. You can get it like on Amazon for 10 or 11, 12 bucks or something like that, or maybe you have something else. And it doesn't necessarily have to be on a white background, and it could be on any image of the item. But you want it to look clear, clean. You want it to maybe look like a good, clean listing, right? You want to put it maybe on top of the board, laying on the floor or your bed, or in your garage or wherever it is, right? Maybe you put the item on top of it. You're able to take pictures, and that's the thing too about taking the pictures, is try to take the pictures good the first time, so you can do the least amount of trimming and editing when you actually get into the eBay app, or if you're loading them on on the web version, right? So either way, you want to have your images as, like, you want to be able to take the picture, for example, right up to the image as much as possible. So maybe it's just ready to go. You don't have to trim it at the end, right? It's on a good white background, so you don't have to put any other background stuff in it. It's still a good listing, right? And then maybe you do some extra editing, maybe in some cases, or you might use some new AI editing now recently. So maybe you do some extra editing with it to make it, sharpen it up. If that's what you're going to do anyway, and you're determined that's what you're going to do, by all means, maybe you don't have to do quite as much of a prep, but really most of the time you do, because if you're going to change the background, you want to have a solid background for it to clean up. You don't want to have it like against some similar color background, and the AI is having a hard time determining. So that like I said, set up for your imagery of you're taking your pictures real quickly of your items, right? And like I said, also having your measurement, like a tape measure handy. So, not only do you weigh how the item is going to go when you're going to ship it, right? What size of box it's likely to fit in, right? And overestimating a little bit just to be safe, right? And overestimating the weight a little bit by half a pound or a few ounces or whatever, the ratio of the size of the item is, right? If it's a 30-pound item, I might put 31 or 32 pounds, right? If it's it seems to be an 8-ounce item, I might go ahead and put it up to a pound if it's just like right at 8 ounce. I want to make sure if it's, if it's like under, if I'm sure it's going to be under that amount, maybe with the package too. So like when I'm weighing my item too, that's another thing too. When you're weighing your item, you got to keep in mind, like if you have the packaging that you're going to put it in handy, like ready to go, which you might not necessarily, maybe you have some boxes, right? You want to have some kind of packaging you could ship the item in reasonably, even handy, right? So like if you're ordering other items from stuff you shop for, you go to Amazon, eBay, and you buy stuff there regularly, whatever, always save your boxes, right? Save your boxes and even break them down and fold them. You can put them into a box. Now we have a good amount of various boxes, so when you're selling your items, you have something to ship them in, right? Some packaging material. Just save it in a big box. Maybe you have a good space to put something like that that's not too in the way. It's kind of out of the way, right? But it just has some good amount of packaging, so you have some boxes handy, right? So that we can ship your stuff right away, right? You ship stuff out right away when someone buys and confirms a payment on eBay. But like I said, so you got the clean way and measure. You got a background of some kind. Like I said, a white board is one thing. You can lay it on the floor or a bed or some surface, or you can put it back against a wall. Also, a white, maybe 5 by 7 foot type of cloth or canvas or something like that, right? I even have one here. It's just in a cloth in a bag. I fold it up, and if I ever need it, I can put it on the floor or something just to give it a nice white backdrop, especially for a larger item, right? If I'm somehow trying to sell a larger item, and eBay has this, maybe some limits, like the post office might only pick up, it depends on if you're taking stuff right to the post office, or if you're having them come to your place to pick stuff up. USPS, I should say, United States Postal Service typically has pickup options available on their website, USPS.com. So if you're thinking about, hey, you need to ship something out, you're not sure how you're going to get it to ship out for some reason, your location or whatever, you might consider having them do a pickup for you. It could be convenient, right? I think they have a limit of like 70 pounds or something like that when doing that. So that's something to keep in mind. But like I said, having good pictures, to take pictures right the first time as much as possible, and taking a good amount of pictures, right? Taking maybe double of some of your best shots, right? You might want to change your main photo in your eBay listing at some point to something that looks a little different or a different angle or something like that. So take plenty of extra pictures, a few extra pictures, maybe take a, maybe for some items it might not call for many, like just a cord or something like that. You might go ahead and take 5 pictures at least anyway, just because, you might want to change the look of the image on the listing at some point, or, put more images in there too. It allows your potential customer to see really good what they're planning on buying, right? And less likely to get a return, stuff like that. So take a decent amount of pictures, right? So clothing, for example, right? Have your tape measure handy, right? So you can show them most of the time unless it really is obvious what the item measurements are and stuff like that, you might want to put that measurement, that tape measure, right next to the item in different ways, right? Like a pair of pants, show the seam and the waist, and just show different, like the pant leg, the width of the pant leg down a couple, 1 or 2 places, just different factors about the measurements of different parts of that item. For just take some good pictures, try to take them clean the first time, so you don't have to edit them much, but you can do some editing in the end if you have to, right? So it's not like, just try to get a good amount of pictures of it with measurements, and so that's basically getting good imagery, right? So it's like with these used items, right? So and then putting that in your eBay listing. So you have some pictures taken of the item, right? It's cleaned and weighed and measured. And you might even have to clean it up a little bit before you send it out if it takes a while to sell, right? Because now you're going to be putting it back somewhere on a shelf or in your inventory somehow, which you might even want to track if you're listing a lot of your items, right? So you might be starting out with a few items, because it takes a little time to list, and even just the process of learning to list efficiently, right? Learning to list efficiently and knowing your process real quickly so you can kind of do it efficiently, because you can take 30 minutes to do a listing, or you could take, 2 minutes. It kind of depends on, maybe 30 minutes is a little exaggeration, but, if you're just dilly-dallying around, it could take you some time. You want to be efficient, you might want to list, an extra 5 or 10 items pretty quick or more, then you want to have this process just kind of quick and to the point, right? So, like I said, you're taking the pictures, you've put them into the listing, and then now it's asking you to fill in some other stuff, right? And I do believe you want to kind of fill in as much details as you can. Right? Now, you might be selling similar from another listing. Now, if the listing's not exactly the same item, maybe it's a similar item, like it's the same brand of clothing and it's a similar looking shirt, it's not exactly the shirt, you can't tell for sure it's exactly the same shirt, then you might want to just go ahead and start a new listing, so that way you can put all the item specifics you can in there fresh yourself, and that way you don't have anything inaccurate that might have been in there from a previous listing. You might overlook it, so you don't want to do that as much as possible. Same time, similar, if you sell similar and it's not the same exact item, you can't count on many of those specifics a lot of times being the same, so you really want to just start a new listing, get as many specifics in there as you can, but at the same time, get it listed, right? So fill in all the rest of the criterion for the listing, right? So do the specifics, item specifics to what right at the top of your head. Try to get some of that information. That's another thing too, is you're weighing and cleaning and measuring the item. Try to take note of things like where any tags might be on the item or labels might be on the item, right? The model of the item. What's the model name or number of that item, right? Try to get that. Take a picture of that too when you're taking pictures. Take a picture of any tags and labels that you can, right? So that'll help you a little later on when you're making the listing. Maybe you don't have to go back and look at the item because you have the label, the picture of it, you can see the model number and whatever else in there, right? Maybe a UPC code, maybe if you had a UPC code somehow still in the product. Maybe it's something you bought but you never opened and you want to just sell it. Maybe it has a UPC code on there. You can take that and put that in your listing item description specifics, right? So that helps it to get more visibility, more of a match inside the Google search engine, right? You want your listing to get good visibility too, not just in eBay, right? But also to show up in eBay under a good amount of possible potentially related search terms for an item just like what you're selling, right? So that's why it's kind of important to do a pretty thorough listing as much as you can. At the same time, not every listing has to be super thorough for someone to potentially find your item and buy it, right? So, but you're getting all your pictures in there, right? You're uploading all your pictures to your listing. You're doing any quick little edits to them, rotating them, maybe trimming a little bit if you need to, but hopefully if you took decent pictures the first time with your cell phone, for instance, you won't have to do that, right? You won't have to do so much editing, and that'll save you some time when you're making the listing. It's just kind of going smoothly. Go into your item specifics, fill in what you can right away. Now you can edit the listing more later, so just get what you can in there, right? So then go ahead and go to the next part, right? You ask you maybe for a description, you might use the AI, you might add a couple of extra lines if there's anything important to know about your item, right? Maybe some part of the item doesn't work. Like I sold a laptop where the keyboard didn't quite work right. It wasn't that it was necessarily broken, it was just that the software wasn't installed right. So I went ahead and explained that in the description, right? So that way when they're getting the item, they know what to expect from it, right? And believe it or not, out of the, whatever many items I've sold, not tons, but maybe 175 items or something like that, I haven't so far as of this video, and I'm certainly not counting on it to continue like that, but so far I haven't had a single return or a single negative comment about any item that was bought on my store so far. I'm not counting on that lasting very long necessarily. I'm expecting at any time I could get a return or something like that. But I'm just saying, so far, from the approach that I've used, I haven't had a single return or a single negative comment. And in fact, it had at least 70 positive review comments so far. So that just kind of helps you boost your store image when someone else is coming there to look at some item on your store. They might be going to look at your store and say, hey, does this person have a positive feedback rating or the 100% or whatever it might be. So it's important to, try to deliver, right? Over deliver, under promise and over deliver, right? That makes sense. So you're making your listing, you're adding your item specifics, you're making your description and giving a little extra detail on it. Maybe you're using the AI description to fill in, like I said, the deal, and then kind of add any extra little specifics that might be relevant. Maybe you don't need to, but then after that, it's going to ask you for a couple of other things like your pricing, right? So I would say you want to not include free shipping with most anything that you're selling. Right, most of the time, don't do free shipping. Right, maybe not even at all. Like I don't do any free shipping. Right, and I'm wrong. I probably could sell a few more items faster, but probably I'd be paying more for shipping. In some cases, it would be a little unpredictable because they might live in some the shipping might cost more for, I might hard to determine my profit margin on something. But what I've been doing is generally pricing my prices not necessarily super high, but a good amount. I'm not just pricing stuff real cheap to try to sell it fast. Right? My idea is to just keep consistently listing new items that I have. Not new necessarily, but items that I had that I might want to sell or resell, or I can even put it for a high price that if I sell it, well, great, I'll just buy another one or something like that. Maybe it depends on what I have that I might want to sell, right? And I list various items, like I said, old shaver as an example, or an old picture with a frame that was, something I might not necessarily want to keep anymore for some reason, or some old clothing items, right? An old tapestry that I've had for a long time, just, I might sell some. And like you said, keeping some reasonable price on them, right? Plus shipping, right? So plus shipping, and like I said, you're measuring and weighing your items, so you're getting some pretty reasonably accurate shipping on there, because it's going to ask you, when you're setting up the shipping for your item, what's the weight and the approximate weight and measurements of what you're going to be shipping, right? That's with the container and everything, right? So, you want to get that to what you measured and weighed it, so you have some reasonable something to put in there right away. You might not necessarily write it down, but maybe it calls for it in your situation. But you're taking note of those measurements and the weight that you did, and you might get to this point you have to do it again if you don't remember it or you didn't write it down. So it's something to take into account, right? So by making your listing, you take into account the weight and the measurements of the shipping component of it, and it's going to calculate the shipping. If you're not including free shipping, it's going to calculate the shipping. So that's why I say don't include free shipping. Most people know they have to pay for shipping for an item. Maybe you're going to price it to reasonably a little bit lower than what you expect to, because the shipping's going to be on top of that. Now, a lot of times you'll make a couple few bucks on the shipping if you overestimate on your measurements and your weight a little bit, right? If you underestimate, then you might end up paying more shipping a little bit than you expected, and end up potentially, losing some money, if you will, depending on how you have it, your sale set up, right? But I'm just taking an item and I'm listing it and I'm putting in there, the weight and the measurements, and I'm a little overestimated if anything, so that way I can take it into account. At the same time, when I ship the item, if someone buys it, right, it's going to say, hey, make a label for this item, and then once I get the item all packaged up, I can take the final weight and actual final weight and measurement, accurate weight and measurement, and that's what it's going to charge me for on that label, right? So that's why I don't want to overestimate too much, because the prospect that buying your item is going to be paying, according to the measurements that you originally put in there. They're a little overestimated. It puts you just a few extra bucks in padding, so that way you can make sure you're covering your costs when because there's a little handling to getting an item ready, and shipping. You want to make sure you're covering your costs. Depends on what your goal is, right? Are you trying to get rid of some stuff real fast that you don't want to have around anymore because it's just like you're moving or something like that? You might consider doing an auction or something like that, but you won't maybe make as much money. It might has some other elements to it. I'm not as familiar with those, but I do buy it now, right? Buy it now. So if somebody sees the item, they can buy it now. I'm not accepting offers. I'm not saying that it's not a good idea. I just typically don't do it because I don't want to fiddle around too much with eBay. I want to just kind of get my stuff listed and make new listings and just keep it store and play. When it sells, I can just get it and ship it out, right? So, if I don't want to have to do too much finagling on eBay, but it might not necessarily be a bad idea depending on what your goal is. Maybe you're trying to liquidate some stuff real quick and you just need the space or something. Like I said, for me, I had some space to kind of put some stuff and keep it, and I'll just take items that I don't want anymore. I'll just kind of add them into this pile and I don't have much of a death pile per se where I have a bunch of stuff that I haven't listed, because I'm not like trying to do it to make a bunch of money. I make another business, but it's nice to be able to get rid of some old stuff that you might not want anymore. Maybe you can donate it to somebody. Maybe that's appropriate. At the same time, maybe you just want it to resell, and you maybe replace some items that you're still maybe using a little. Maybe you have a TV monitor that you want to get rid of. Maybe you can try to sell it for get a few bucks out of it, or maybe sell it for a decent price, whatever, and replace it with a newer monitor, for example, or something, or a TV or whatever. It's just an example of an item you might be wanting to replace around your home that you have, but you've been wanting to upgrade for a few bucks more. If you sold the old one, it would make sense to get a new one that's more up to date, right? So those are some reasons why you might be doing this, right? But like I said, and this is what I'm only making a fortune with. I'm making, 500 to 750 a month, just part-time listing. I have maybe about 350 items at the current moment, so it's not like I'm listing a ton of stuff, but I have a pretty good amount of items listed, and mostly just, some old stuff that I don't want anymore, some clothing items and electronic items. I sold a laptop recently that wasn't really working great, took some troubleshooting to fix or whatever. And like, believe it or not, I actually sold virtually every single item I sold has been for a pretty good price on eBay, right? Because I'm willing to kind of sit on it a little bit, right? And it's almost like anything can potentially sell, right? Like anything potentially could sell. Like I sold an old pair of shears for just clipping, pruning stuff in your yard. Now, I'm telling you, this pair of shears looked like, like just looked like them old shears. The handle was all cut and just messed up. And I figured, well, why not just list it? And believe it or not, that pair of shears got a bunch of views. Finally sold for I don't know, like $20 or something like that. Plus shipping, right? But considering an old pair of shears, I could get a new pair of shears for 15 or less, and get a nice new pair of shears, right? Now, they were actually a decent pair of shears. Like they worked good. They just were old and dirty, and just kind of the handle was kind of messed up looking, and I just like, and I wasn't using it much for anything, so I figured just list it, some old tools, and that was just one item I had sold. It was cool to get that money back in my account, and I can use it to buy a replacement, or maybe I don't need that item anymore, right? So I can just replace something like that when I need to, right? With like Amazon next day delivery and eBay deliver pretty fast, or some other, maybe I order directly from some other place. Usually the shipping's pretty quick. I can get an item to my place pretty quick without having to finagle too much. But so like I said, you're doing item description, listing, and you're making the size and weight of your package in there, and you're gonna price the item accordingly. A good price, not necessarily super low just to get rid of it, unless you're really needing to get rid of stuff. But the idea there is that when you sell an item, you actually get a few bucks back, and because eBay has their fees, right? eBay has their fees, and it's not necessarily a fortune, but it's a few bucks. Sometimes you think, hey, it's $5 or $10 out of my profit. Well, make sure you ask a reasonable price for your items. And eBay usually will show a decent listing to a good amount of people as much as possible, as long as there's some people looking for it. Right? Some items might not really have many searches, so just expect some items to sit around for a while, right? Depends on what you're selling. But if it's used items, like I said, I managed to sell a pretty good amount of items on eBay for, like I said, a pretty good price. Not a single one of them has come back so far, right? So far, which is kind of surprising to me. I figured I would at least have a couple returns by now. The only one time I remember was somebody complaining because the sweater they had bought, that I just found the sweater. Like it was just like in some clothes that someone left, a neighbor had left outside. And the sweater, turned out the sweater could retail for like $70, $75, and I went ahead and listed the sweater for like $70 or something like that, or $60 or $70, and someone bought the sweater. So I was kind of like, wow, hey, this sweater is like a $60, $70 bill. Like, there's this little sweater that I like normally would have just, left there or given to Goodwill or something like that. I'm not thinking much about it, but some lady bought it, and she only complaint was that it wasn't exactly the color that we saw like in the images. It looked like it was darker than it actually was. It turned out it was purple. So, but ultimately she just, she wasn't like upset about it. She just was like kind of a little bit perturbed because it wasn't the color that was, like maybe I said it was purple and it didn't look, I can't remember exactly, but it wasn't a big deal. Just refunded $15 off of it. Still made a pretty good, sale. Still made it, and she was fully satisfied. So that was just the only one example. But like you said, if you list your stuff honest, legit, with good pictures and an honest description of anything that might be wrong with it, take pictures of any defects that you can see on the item, right? So that, like if they get it, it's not like, oh wait, this wasn't in the listing, right? So, and but also they're going to look at the images, they see that you're honest about what this item is. So they know what they're getting, right? They feel like they know what they're getting, less likely to get a return, right? So that's a big deal. I say you got everything filled out in the listing, right? You could even promote the listing for a percentage, which they might ask you to. They might make suggested amounts like 10% or more, I recommend maybe a lower percentage, if anything, like 2 to 4% max, because it could take a few bucks. But like I said, eBay has their fees. It's a promotion fee if you want to promote your item for any extra. Otherwise, it's just the natural listings, which I sold probably most of my stuff through natural listings. But I just started putting it up to 2 or 3% because I saw other YouTubers were doing it, and it seemed like, yeah, well, maybe I could get rid of stuff a little bit faster. At the same time, I probably would have sold most of the stuff with just the natural listings, because like you said, you fill out item specifics and you also learn some more about your item specifics, and you maybe chat GPT or Google search and AI, or if you have some AI in your phone, it can help you get some information. Or you have like on Samsung, and other devices, they have that circle to search, and where you can just take a picture of the item and then circle it and it'll find the item. So if you're not sure about the specifics of the item, that might be a way to find the items. Circle to search, and it finds other items of it just like it. Maybe even finds an eBay listing of that same item. Or maybe you go to eBay and you search for that item according to the model or whatever the item is, the item number, etc., and you're able to find the same item. And sometimes you're not. Maybe it's a clothing, it's like a brand that but you just can't find that specific shirt or that specific pair of pants, right? So you just do your best to fill in the item specifics according to the item, what you can see from the labels. Take pictures of the labels, add them in there. Like I said, when you're uploading the images, you'll have pictures of the labels. That way they're not asking you questions like, is this machine washable or something like that so much. Just little questions you can prevent them asking because they're already in the listing, right? And so it doesn't really take long to make that listing, as long as you know what you're doing. Like, so you're adding the images, you're making the title a good title that's descriptive of the brand, the size, the color, right? Is it men's or women's? Some stuff like that. Get better at it, right? Don't worry about getting it all perfect the first time, right? You stack the deck in your favor gradually, but you try to stack the deck in your favor. Yes, don't just be too haphazard about it. Get better at making a decent listing. Right, so like I said, a good title. It's not all caps and money. It's just a good, straightforward, legitimate grammar title, right? And then, like I said, your description, your item specifics, and description, pricing. The weight and measurements of your item, and like if you're going to promote it at all, like I said, I probably wouldn't do too high of a percentage. Just like I said, the 4% or less, or probably 2 or 3% if anything, just to give it more visibility if you want to sell it a little quicker or for a higher price potentially. And then set your price, right? Set your price, and if you want to accept offers, that's up to you. But like I said, basically everything else should be mostly straightforward. When you're doing the listing, whether you're doing it on your phone through the eBay app or you're doing it on the computer, right? So this is a little bit of talking about this process, but like I said, clean, weigh, and measure, right? Is edit the background, right? Get good pictures up close and a good amount of pictures, including with the tape measure next to them, right? So that way you can get a good amount of pictures showing the proportions of your items, and then from different angles, and trying to get a good, reasonable background, like a white background ideally, or something like that, so you can take some good pictures. At the same time, like I said, you can get the listing up, and you can always edit more about it later if you need to. But at the same time, it's kind of nice to get it all good in one shot if you can, right? So take a good amount of pictures, right? You have your item, and then just uploading it right to the listing, right? And then going right into your title, right? And then your item specifics, right? And then your like stuff like basically condition. It might ask you the condition of the item. You might say fair or good condition, fully functional, or no notable stains or tears, or just something simple like that about the condition. Just straightforward. And then your pricing, and when you're taking offers, your quantity. Fill in as many of the item specific fields as you reasonably can. I think you'll learn that there's a couple few that aren't maybe so important. It might ask you for the weight and measurements of the item there. It's ideal to get those in there, but sometimes it's kind of like, you just try to get the listing up, and then you can kind of do a little more detail later if you want to edit your listings. And like I said, you might unlist the listing later on and then relist it, because it helps to refresh its listing in the eBay system. So, at that time when you relist an item, maybe you relist 1 to 5 or 10 items every day, or 5 or whatever, once a week. You relist a few items that were listed on your eBay, and you unlist them and then relist them. And at that time, maybe you listed it on your phone through the eBay app, right? You listed items then, and there's some fields that might be available when you're doing editing on the computer. So when you unlist and relist the item, you can go in and just maybe edit some more stuff in the listing, add some more specifics or some more information about the item that helps you get a better, search result, right? And you want to try to get the UPC code, right? Maybe some other relevant data that might be asking for in the listing, depending on the type of item that you're listing, whether electronic or clothing or whatever else, food item or something like that, but that other data, whatever it is, but including ideally a UPC code, which not every single item will have them, and it's not always easy to find. You might use ChatGPT and eBay and Amazon and Google to find other listings, or just look up a UPC code for the product. Maybe it's a common product, like a certain series of Xbox probably has one UPC code, right, or something like that, but maybe a cert might be hard to find, UPC code or something like that. But the more UPC codes you can get in there in your listings, the more of a chance it's going to get listed in like Google, right? So people can go to Google and search for your item and find your item in eBay listing that's showing up on Google to more increase the chances of it selling faster, right? And maybe some other search engines as well. So that's the reason why it's important to get some good relevant data inside there. Someone's looking for a 300 thread count sheet set, and you have that there, it's ideal if you know that information, put it in there, right? Maybe you don't know that information, hey, just do what you can, just get as complete as you can, right? Then make the listing, right? So make your listing should go live right away. It might tell you if the listing's not complete, if there's something that needs to be added to the item specifics that you forgot, left out, like a critical piece of info like the size or something, it'll tell you. But other than that, if it doesn't stop you, you can continue and just make the listing. It'll go live, and then you can go on to your next listing, right? And it really should only take you about 5 to 10 minutes to do a listing of a reasonable item. Some items can be even quicker, if it's just a smaller item. But, being realistic, it's probably going to take you 2 to 5 minutes, or maybe even up to 10 or 15 minutes to list an item, depending on what it is, right? So especially with a bigger item where it needs to be measured or taken different pictures from different angles or stuff like that, a bigger item. But like I said, and also with clothes, you might take your clothes and put them on a hanger, so you can either hang them up and take some kind of reasonable picture, or just put them down on a board, like a whiteboard, like I say, if it's big enough, or a cloth or something, and you can put it on a bed or something. You can lay the clothing item out there and take pictures and measuring tape a little bit around different angles to show them what the width of, because people looking at their clothes are going to say, hey, does this match what I have? Is this cuff, is it the same width of my current shirts that I wear, or stuff like that might be happening. So you want to have good visibility of your images and up close and zoomed in as reasonably much as possible, like up close, so that people can really inspect the item, right? Especially with used items and clothes. So hey, these are just a few tips. And Mike here, I appreciate you listening in, and I certainly appreciate a like or a share or a comment, and let me know if any of this helps. It's not like is expected to help most advanced users or people that are already really selling a bit on eBay. Maybe there's an extra little tip in here that might help. But for those who are first starting out or thinking about eBay, maybe you're thinking, hey, well, what's the first step? Or what is it really complicated? It was not really complicated. Make sure when you use your eBay account setup, which might be a little bit of a process. Make sure that they're going to ask you to send in your tax documents or something like that, and maybe direct deposit info, right? But other than that, it's pretty basic once you have your eBay account set up. And you might already have one set up if you've already bought some stuff on eBay. You know what I mean? You already have your eBay account set up. You can just set up essentially your store, if you will. And like I said, this is a free version of the eBay. Like they have their stores, you can pay for other upgraded versions of an eBay store. If you're a more serious eBayer, that might be the right move. Maybe save you some money on transaction fee. Like I said, the transaction fees can be a little bit, so you want to take into account, a transaction fee when you're pricing your item. You want to price it so low, and then on the transaction fee, and all of a sudden you're only making $3 on the item or something like that, or $5. Might not even be worth it to list some chintzy item that's just, some smaller item. At the same time, think about it kind of like everything is creating a new listing on your store, right? And sure, you might sell some of the smaller items, might not be a big a deal, but like you said, you're pricing them for good, so you're not going and pulling it out for nothing. It's just you're pricing it for a reasonable amount so that it's like worth your time to go pull it out and ship it, right? But also it's just adding another listing. Even if it's a little overpriced, you're adding another listing to your store so that you can potentially get more overall views and visibility, right? You're kind of stacking them up, right? You're kind of really loading it up pretty good with items, depending on how many items you have and how many items you're selling. But try to resell almost not everything. Like if you're using something you might not want to list it because like, it's going to have some wear and tear a good amount or something like that. But if it's just like a TV monitor or something like that, it's just sitting there. Well, you could list it, and maybe someone buys it for a good amount, and then you might decide to upgrade it or something. So I'm telling you, might not want to list it because you don't have any reason to. So like, I'm not saying to do it for no reason, but if you have something you want to replace, or you want to or you want to make some money off something that you've found or collected or was given to you or something like that, maybe someone gifted you something for Christmas and it's just not the item that you want or would use, and you want to sell it on eBay, right? So like I said, the more listings you have, the better. And also, if you do lag in listing new stuff, expect your sales to potentially slow down. Like, eBay likes to know you're making sales because they're making a little profit off of it, right? So they like to know you're making legitimate sales that stick, don't get returns and stuff like that, right? So there's a reason why you want to go through a reasonable quality process to where you're under promising and over delivering as much as you can, right? Under promising and over delivering to some reasonable extent doesn't mean you don't charge well, but you under promise and over deliver. So people have the right emotional expectations. They're not going to be upset after the purchase because something wasn't as expected, or it's more than they expected, or whatever, right? It's less than they expected. It's delivering more than they expected to prevent those returns, I should say, in this case, or something like that. And like I said, I'm not to claim to be the master of it. So far, I've been lucky with that. But overall, my experience in sales of any kind, that has been my experience. Is though you want to under promise and over deliver with your eBay store, right? So then eBay will see and reward you with more visibility, and every time you're making new listings, good quality listings, eBay will notice in different ways and give you more visibility in another listing. You list 3 or 5 items today, it's more likely you're going to get a sale, right? And as I load it up in the beginning, get 25 or 50 items on there, you could maybe crack a first sale of something, or 2 or 3 items or something. Don't expect it to just flood in. There could be fluctuations. One month could be pretty good, another month could be pretty slow. That could happen, right? But at the same time, you stack a good amount of items up, and maybe you have a bunch of old stuff that you've been trying to sell or get rid of, or don't know what to do with, right? This is just an opportunity to get, and like I said, sell for a good amount. Like I'm telling you, the stuff that I sold, I don't know how else I would have sold it for the prices I did. Like this old computer that wasn't really working, and this computer's like 20 years old, right? But it still worked. It wasn't like it didn't work, but I still sold it for like $90. Wasn't like a big deal, but this thing's just sitting around. I'm not doing anything. I need some troubleshooting. I don't want to mess with it. Like take potentially hours to fix that little thing, even though it still kind of worked for some, it wasn't like I sold a dud computer, the person knew what they were getting and everything like that, but still got an extra $90-100 for this 20-year-old computer that I had just sitting around. I could have just, what else is going to do with the thing? Basically just practically throw it out, because it's like, what else am I going to do with it? But I sold it on eBay for an extra $90, right? Same thing with a sweater that, was just an example. So don't underestimate it. I know it's a full fax machine that I thought, was using a fax machine, but certainly there are people that do, businesses that do. But somebody paid $90 for this whole fax machine that I just found, it's still plugged in and worked, right? And sold a bunch of other items that, really didn't think, just an old folder for, Citibank, just like a leather fold, I don't know if it was leather necessarily, but I don't think it was leather, maybe it was, but it was just a Citibank folder. I'm thinking, just some old business thing that, just jump. If I'm not using it, it's going to go to the trash or Goodwill or something, whatever. It's not like anything that important, but somebody still paid like $15 or $20 plus shipping for it. So I wouldn't underestimate. And maybe that's not a big come up for you to, it's even worth your time. If you make good money, you're like, why get this, list a $15 item? But like I say, if it's behooves you, maybe you have some time in your weekend or something like that to get rid of some old stuff, you make some quick listings of 10 items at a time, and you have them kind of in a pile, maybe some stuff that you already have set aside to sell, right? Or at least just a few items at a time, maybe 3 to 5 or 10 items, and you thought, hey, I want to sell this item, and decide to go put it in that pile, and that way it's ready there for you the next time you're going to go do these eBay listings, right, of a few items maybe on the weekend or something like that, right? But those extra small items kind of giving you some extra quick listings to throw up on your eBay. Might help you sell a bigger item just because eBay sees you're making more listings and just starts giving you more visibility, and just helps to give you more listings overall, more views on all your combined listings and potentially just to your store. Maybe someone sees one listing and says, hey, let me go check out the store, and then they see you have some other items, right? So just overall more visibility, right? So like I said, load it up. Like I said, stack it up. Maybe nothing seems to be selling it. You list a couple items. You're thinking, some people make the mistake, they just list a couple few items and they think, oh, well, nobody's buying this item yet. This is a pretty good item. Why is nobody buying it? Well, maybe there's a lot of competition. Like, I sold some Xbox controllers actually. As an example, like, there's a bunch of people selling Xbox controllers, and I sell it right away. But I did sell them old Xbox One controllers or something like that for still $32, which is, more than price. What if I was to go to take them to a GameStop, they would give me like $15 for them, and they hardly even. I think they worked. It's just they weren't in great shape, and they're from some old Xbox. But I still on eBay give them a little time, but they still sold for like $32 or something like that, $35 I think one of them maybe, and normally I would just sit like I already had some other Xbox for a new Xbox, so I didn't really need these old controllers. Wasn't using them. Where else am I going to go sell them? Right, where else am I going to sell them? I think sell them on, go take them back to GameStop was an idea, because I had one nearby, and I thought, at one point, take these back over there, and maybe I can take these 3 old controllers back and maybe have enough money for one new controller. And then the new controllers were kind of pricey, and it just wasn't really a great deal. But I went ahead and listed them on eBay, and like I said, I still sold them for at least $30-something each. And so, like I said, don't underestimate that, someone might pay reasonable money for an item on eBay, right? So, anyway, just a few tips. Like I said, load it up. Like if you have a good amount of items, maybe you have a few right now, load up another 3 or 5 or 10 items that you can list that you don't want anymore. You try to do that maybe once a day, once a week, whatever it is. Be consistent with it. But, depending how much time you have, try to get a few of those listings up pretty quick. In the beginning, like I said, it's going to be a learning process, so don't be afraid to stumble and take some time to get those first few listings going. You might think, oh, this listing is too... But once you do it a good 10, 20 times, you start, okay, this is just get these pictures, click, and load them up, boom, 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 add the specifics as much as I can. First time, I can always maybe update it later, but the main thing, I'm getting another listing up with some reasonable listing, data on it, and, good pride, making sure my price is reasonable. If I'm unsure, I could do some research later and maybe reprice it or adjust or edit. But, maybe sitting down for a minute, that's another part of the listing too, is like, you might be doing some research for a few minutes on your computer to make sure you're listing this product or item right? Like I said, looking for the UPC code. Or maybe you are looking up the weight to see if it matches. Maybe that's not the best example if you're weighing the item yourself, which is what you should be doing, right? And then you know exactly what you're shipping. But there might be some measurement of the phone you're selling. I sold a bunch of phones on eBay. It's another thing too. A bunch of old cell phones and broken ones. Like ones with broken, completely shattered screens, some old iPhones, and people buy them for like $30. Sell right away, not necessarily. It depends on what it is. Like, tell people, show people what you're selling them. But, they maybe they replace the screen, or they know how to fix those items, or something like that. There's a good number of interesting items that I kind of sold. I really wouldn't think that anybody be paying any good money for, right? Like, I think, if I sold this stuff at a flea market, someone might give me $2 or $3 or $5 for this item, right? And I'm trying to think of some other ones too, but there's really a bunch of different things that you can sell. And so don't underestimate, an item. Don't say, hey, well, we can buy this item maybe. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying never. Right? Especially if it's only going to list for a very small amount of money, maybe it's just a waste of your time. Not really worth it to make that extra small listing. But if it's at least maybe $30, $20-$30, maybe that's worth your time. Maybe it's worth it to list a smaller item that you're getting rid of, some old, like is it charging cords or something that still work but you don't use anymore. If I look here back just real quickly, some items that I had sold, recently sold, a few pairs of these gloves that I had built up, just gloves, like some work gloves I hadn't really ever used or didn't use much, and still sold them for like $23-25, like the one I just seen right now, $24.95, right? Plus shipping, right? Plus shipping, which actually this person paid $6 for the shipping, so really $31 for this pair of gloves. Right? I don't know, that's not way out. Those gloves that sell for $31. Most of the time you go to the store, you probably can get a pair of gloves for $20 or $25. Pretty good pair of leather gloves or designer gloves. These are just some firm grip gloves. Also sold this hacksaw that, like, it's only $15 plus shipping, which was basically about $22 altogether, because The shipping was like $6.75, it's $14.95. Not a big deal, but this hacksaw, it's just this piddly old hacksaw I had. I'm just thinking that, hey, this little tiny little hacksaw, to throw it away or get rid of it, or I don't need, I mean, like, it's in my toolbox. It's not like it was not usable, but I wanted to get a new one. I thought, oh well, maybe I just list this hacksaw, get rid of these old tools that I have. Sure enough, that thing sold for 20. It says I paid $22 for that, right? And then I had an old computer that was a good computer. Just I already have another one of them. I have two other ones. I don't really need this one, so I sold that. So that for $125, just an older mini PC. It was about how much I paid for it. Sold a blanket, sold some vacuum parts, sold some old art supplies, right? Sold an old iPod for $60, which probably like I can get a newer looking old iPod for a newer one than the one I had, which had these scratches on the screen. I mean, I showed the pictures and everything. Someone still bought it for $58 plus shipping, right? So $65. Also, an old flute, right? This flute was in bad shape. I just found it like totally messed up. And I just cleaned it up a little bit the best I could. But the pictures certainly didn't look great. Like you can see, you look up the pictures, it just has all kinds of potting marks on it, or just whatever kinds of mess. It's just these are some kind of restoration or whatever. But it was a Gemeinhart, which is a pretty well-known brand. I didn't ask very much, but I still sold it for $94 plus shipping, $110 basically, $110 with the shipping. Which maybe it could have even sold for some more. Who knows? If I had kept it for a while. But I just figured, so it wasn't really in good looking condition. The case didn't look in good condition. Had some marks on it. So I just figured, whatever. List it for like $100 or something. Fair enough. $94 plus shipping. So that was kind of cool. And I sold some old phones that I had, some LG phones that, they're just pretty old phone, like 8 or 9, 10-year-old phone. Still turns on, works, but it's just an old 4G phone. Not much that kind of it's just not up to today's power. It still could maybe function. I still sold 2 of those phones. I have another one that's still for sale for $50 or $60 or something like that. But I sold the other 2 for at least $50, right? $50, whatever. I mean, I didn't really have any other use for these old phones, right? Sold, a dog leash or 2. There's just, like I said, a few things that I had sold that kind of didn't have any use for, and let's see here. We can go back even further. See, it's 90 days. So if I see the current year, and it just means there's some steady stuff that's selling there. Not so much to bring so much money, but to replace, not to throw it out or something like that, right? So if you like this video and you're getting some value out of it, certainly appreciate your like or share. But yeah, just appreciate you being here. But these are just a few tips for you to help maybe get you in the right mindset. Don't think about maybe eBay as a super big business unless you're really ready to take on the beast. And what that means is a bit of storage space, right? Unless you're sourcing items, right? Sourcing items like wholesale or cheap, or in used stores or auctions or something like that, or whatever. That's if you're wanting to try to make some kind of basically an online thrift store, if you will, right? Which is kind of like what I'm doing, but it's not necessarily for the purpose of making it. I'm just trying to resell a lot of stuff that I have and have had, and that's really my main goal to it, and it brings some extra income that kind of pays whatever, it just I also sold some old JB Weld that I had, which is for pasting auto parts together, like repairing an auto part or something like that. JB Weld tube, and I had a few tubes, and that sold. It's just like anything could sell on here. An iPod docking station, pretty old looking, not in great shape, but still sold for $30, right? Plus shipping, right? So I'm adding shipping in here, right? An old handheld massager, like a sport massager, for $53 plus shipping. So everything was plus shipping. And I don't think people swayed. I also had a battery charger, like a cord battery charger, that kind of the face of it was kind of warped and just didn't look in great shape. But, somebody from Puerto Rico paid $94 for it plus shipping. So I didn't just sell it for it was $14 shipping. So I didn't just, sell all these items real cheap, right? Even though they're used items and they function and everything. But there's people out there that are looking for these items, and some of these items I think, wow, they could have just bought a cheaper version right on eBay, maybe a newer version, but for whatever reason they bought my version. and we're happy with it. It's not like it overpriced everything or anything like that all crazy. You know, like I said, you see the price that I was asking for these items, you know, they're reasonable, but not super cheap either at the same time. So these are just a few of them. Like I said, maybe try it out. Let me know if you pop on the line. Let me comment below if you're running an eBay right now for any reasons, and you know what your goals are with it. If you're looking to make an extra 1,000 or more a month, or if you're just doing it very part-time, casual, maybe make a few $100 or something like that. Maybe you're a big eBayer now and you have some input and you're pretty, you know, got a good track record. You want to add some extra tips. I certainly welcome that. I know anybody that might be watching this video would welcome it. And, you know, that's all I got for now. But, hey, maybe this helps you get right into that mindset of what you can do with the process. Like I said, list, clean, weigh, and measure. Clean, weigh, and measure. Get background. Take good close-up pictures, right? Good amount of pictures, right? And use measuring tape next to it, your item, so they can see what the proportions are, right? Make a good, thorough listing as much as you can when you add your pictures and you add your item description. Make a searchable listing. Add any item specifics that you possibly can, right? Overestimate on your weighing and shipping a little bit. Add shipping to most items, or don't just do free shipping unless you definitely know what you're doing. Same time, it's probably not going to necessarily appeal to people that much. They probably in most cases just add up the total amount of the price and just ask themselves, hey, is this price, you know, a competitive overall total price? I'm wrong. Some people may be psychologically, you know, messed up by free shipping and just appeals to them more. Yeah, but overall, I think it's going to be more of a headache for you in many cases, especially as a new eBayer until you have more experience with it. But yeah, anyway, those are my thoughts. Thanks for listening in. If you happen to like this video, I appreciate it. Look forward to seeing you in the next round. Maybe you'll check out some of my other videos, maybe some other business tips that, you know, from what I do know. And certainly look forward to learning from the rest of you all and maybe some other people here on this platform. All right, Micah signing out. Thanks for listening in. See you next time. Bye-bye.